Welcome. It's Russ Curtis here. I wanted to talk today about the difference between evidence-based practice and practice-based evidence, and how this can be important in the behavioral health world, and particularly to step out of a train of thought that I see in behavioral health that's very medical model and reductionistic. By reductionistic, I mean that if we can just reduce the issues down and assess to an extent to where we can nail this diagnosis, then we will have an evidence-based treatment that we can apply, much like maybe what we would do with medication, medical doctors and professionals do with medication and surgery. I believe there's a lot more factors involved in behavioral health, and I think practice-based evidence in combination with evidence-based practice may be a way to step out of this kind of narrow viewpoint that we have used. This isn't a term I've come up with. I'm going to put a good study, a meta-analysis of qualitative studies of what was helpful, what clients found helpful. And I think that's a really good start at applying practice-based evidence in teaching counselors and working with clients. Okay, so to begin, first of all, evidence-based practice, which you hear about a lot, is we want to use treatment modalities that have a lot of evidence saying that they're efficacious. Okay, and some things to consider when we look at this in terms of behavioral health. Evidence-based practice will say that we've got a lot of evidence suggesting that this is helpful in treating folks, in helping them heal. One of the biggest, and I don't know of anything that comes close to this, is the therapeutic relationship. Okay, the quality of the therapeutic relationship is the single best predictor of client outcome in the behavioral health world. And by relationship, we're talking about somebody who's professional and yet they're empathetic. They are objective and yet they can form a relationship and they can maintain a relationship with the person. So those are just a few of the qualities we're talking about with therapeutic relationship. It's been said, and you've heard me say this before, that people that have been practicing as counselors, psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, and every other behavioral health professional, that the longer you practice, the more of a humanist you become. And by humanism, the theories that kind of fit within there, but there are others, are person-centered, that we attribute more to Carl Rogers, existential, which we can attribute to a lot of different sources, but from a therapy standpoint, Yalom and Frankel, Bugental, some of the names that come up with that. Also Gestalt, I've got a video on Gestalt, perhaps not as much how Fritz Perls practiced it, but maybe Irvin Polster might be a good one to, if you want to watch some videos on how that's done, Gestalt's done in a very humanistic way. But the idea is the longer you practice, the more of a humanist you become. Doesn't mean that you throw the other things out the window: cognitive behavioral, solution focus, psychodynamic. But what it does mean is you really truly recognize the power of the relationship and how that really is. If that's missing, none of these other things are going to be incredibly helpful for clients in most situations. Not all. So evidence-based practice, we got a bunch of evidence supporting the power and the healing power of the therapeutic relationship. The other thing, cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of evidence suggesting that helping people consider their thoughts more intentionally and then make changes in their thoughts, maybe become less rigid, less perfectionistic, less negative, can help. So there's a lot of research supporting cognitive behavioral therapy as well. I've got some videos on that. I may do more. I've got kind of some ways of doing cognitive restructuring. And I also think mindfulness is one of the most potent forms of cognitive restructuring, which is ultimately asking people to notice the thought that's happening, but recognize that you're more than the thought. Okay, so it's kind of a meta cognitive behavioral therapy. What practice-based evidence is compared to evidence-based practice is that while working with clients, it's highly individualized on what is working for them, what they would like to see more of, less of, processing throughout the session, and particularly at the end of sessions to make sure, is there something I said that was limited in my belief system and caused you to feel not as valued or heard. So it is a collaboration. And remember, the collaboration is different than what we would typically see in a medical model. The medical model is, I'm going to listen briefly to your symptoms and then I'm going to apply a treatment. And so this is, no, we're going to recognize the internal wisdom of the client. We're going to recognize their traditions and what they value, and we're going to incorporate that in counseling with their help. We also want to recognize the research that help comes from the client. The client is the one that makes changes. We can do all we want and be really great at cognitive behavioral and solution focus and all these other different theories, which all are valuable. But if the client is not invested and lit up, if you will, if we haven't helped motivate and raise their energy and motivation, that anything that we apply or force, if you will, is not going to hold. Okay, and you know this, if you've practiced at all, you know that this is the case. The relationship is powerful and it heals. So that's what practice-based evidence is. It's really attending to the therapeutic relationship. Yes, it's using all the skills that you've learned, but it's in a very collaborative. We're not directing things. We're not the expert. What we're an expert as is relationship building and maintaining and paying attention to and being vulnerable and being humble, and that we're willing to admit our mistakes, willing to admit biases, unintentional microaggressions. That's what practice-based evidence is. Okay, so a lot more collaborative. Again, I'm going to put a study down in the comments section. I'm going to be doing more videos on this so that we can evolve the field of the behavioral health away from, even if it's not intentional, the medical reductionistic model of care. That does not work well in the behavioral health world. All right, let me know your comments on that. More videos to come. Y'all take care. We'll talk to you soon.